As we speak, I've just come off another conversation. This was a conversation that was led by women here in the US that are involved in the Me Too movement. And we were discussing disparities that we see all over the world, including in the US, when it comes to women. So I think as a woman leader working in the United Nations, this is a very important day because it takes us back to 1995 when this whole dialogue started in Beijing. And what has happened over time, where now what we're talking about then is part of the whole agenda within the United Nations on sustainable development goals. And gender is a critical part of what we're doing. The good news is that we're seeing a lot of progress. And I can point to one statistic where we have been pushing hard for girls' education all over the world, parity between boys and girls. And we're starting to see that in many countries. There's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to school completion and transitioning girls to work. And so I was very excited with the last speaker talking about STEM and how her path can help define the path of so many women in Zambia. I think we have to live by example, and we have to sort of look at how, as women, can mentor other young women that they can do it and they can get there if they work hard.
Absolutely. Where do you think your transition happened from being somebody who had aspirations but then became inspiring? Where do you think that change happened for you?
You know, it all goes back to how you brought up. And I mean, I think for me, the thing I want to point to is our mothers. We as women need to recognize the important role our mothers have in role modeling who we become. So I had a mother that was a teacher, primary school teacher. She had 8 children, 6 of us girls. And then we had a dad who would have wanted to have many more boys in the family. Unfortunately, and that's why my mother ended up having 8 children, because my dad was looking for that son. So our fifth born is a boy, was a boy. We lost him, but then our last born is also a boy. So you can see how he pushed my mother hard to have those. And so in his eyes, in our home, he didn't see any value in us. Not to say he didn't appreciate us, but he just felt, well, these are girls who end up getting married and maybe get pregnant before they get married. So it was very tough. He gave us very tough love in the home just to keep us in check. But our mother gave us that soft love and reassurance that we can do more, and made sure that even when our father gave us money when we were going to school, she gave us that cushion just for us to make sure we had everything we needed so that we didn't end up doing other things because we needed money. So it comes from that. And then I think going through my own education, I can point to a number of times that were inspiring to me in a way because of some of the negative attitudes that I experienced. I mean, I think going through high school, it was just going back, I was living at the time in Japan with my aunt, who became the Chief Justice in Zambia. But I was going to school there, high school, and it was an all-girls school. And it was actually surprising to me that that school did not offer the science classes that I wanted to do, because it was a girls' school. Next to us, St. Mary's was a boys' school. So if you wanted to do additional maths, if you wanted to do physics, if you wanted to do chemistry, that school allowed the girls who wanted to do that to be part of that school. That created a lot of problems for all of us that were doing that, because already the fact that you're in the minority and the majority in the class were boys meant that we experienced a lot of bullying. But that did not take us back. As girls who decided this is what we wanted to do, we fought back hard. And because of that, we also worked very hard to make sure that our grades were reflective of the fact that we were as good as them, if not better. That's one. And I linked up with a girl from Korea who was very, very good in sciences and maths, and she was a big motivation for me. So I can talk to that. But going to medical school, I came back to Zambia to go to medical school. I was also surprised that when I was in medical school, there were just, I think in our class, we were a class of 45 and there were only 9 girls. So there you go again. Again, we were experiencing this, they're better than us and, bullying us and not allowing us to speak when we wanted to speak. But that did not hold us back. So what am I trying to say? What I am trying to say is that my life experiences actually, for me, made me who I am today, because I had these biases and experiences. But at the back end of this was a very strong family that kept me going, because they reassured me that I was as good as anybody else. But I don't think many girls in Zambia have those positive experiences. I just wanted to say that.
Mm. Very interesting. And with regards to your experience within HIV and AIDS, where are you in terms of what you then use to pull other women through? So I find the area that you were in is a very sensitive topic, but how do you help other people come through the things that they have to go through? Because I feel you have that powerful way of pulling people to be more than they can be.
Before I get to HIV/AIDS, I just want to talk about my career path and why I do the things I do. Okay, moving away from the conversation I've just had with you around my own education, and I can talk to my postgraduate training and the gender stereotypes that I went through there, and also navigating now the UN system. It's not easy for women. At every level of your career, you're faced with these challenges, and you have to figure out how you navigate that. But I think going back to the work I do, which is basically ending AIDS in children across the world. And you know that Zambia has gone through a very tough experience with the HIV epidemic. Mm. And that happened as I was starting my career in medicine. HIV hit us hard. And having studied both in Zambia and in England, and coming back to this ravaging epidemic was very, very difficult for me in terms of acknowledging what I was doing at UTH, where I was working as a pediatrician, and trying to balance that with what was going on around me. And so I saw many, many issues as I addressed HIV in the hospitals. One is that the face of HIV was really a family face. So imagine that at that time in the 80s, two parents come in with a sick child. They look absolutely well, but they have a baby in front of them. They've just had this baby. It's probably their first baby. And this child has pneumonia. Mm. And pneumonia in any circumstance should be treatable. But then as a clinician, you're seeing this child every day really struggling for their breath. And the two parents looking at you and saying, what's going on? And then you are the deliverer of bad news to those parents to say there may be an underlying problem. And they're looking at you and saying, what are you talking about? Our baby is nice and bouncy. This is a 3-month-old baby coming in with an AIDS and HIV underlying disease. You have to do that. That was taxing for me. But then you also saw mothers who were wasting away, or because of HIV, really thin, and all they have between the baby and themselves, the only comfort is that baby on the breast. Mm. And that baby is sucking away, and I'm looking and saying that breast is probably full of HIV. But that's the only comfort between the two people. I believe in breastfeeding. I'm a pediatrician, but that used to kill me because we had no other options for these women. Mm. The third was a grandmother. We saw many grandmothers that time who had lost their first child, their second child, and now they were becoming parents themselves because of the children. But that wasn't an issue for me too much. What was an issue for me is how now these parents were coming in and out of the hospital with this child, another child. So instead of enjoying their grandmotherhood, they were now going through this despair with these very sick children that had been left behind. And I said to myself, if HIV is killing our people, at least let it not infect our children, so that even if this grandmother is bringing this child to me, they're not going to have the experiences they're having. They're going to enjoy their grandchildren. But this was not the case. So I started to think about whether being trained as a pediatrician was enough, because what we're seeing in front of us was beyond what I was taught, which was to take care of children, treat them, and let them go home. And that's when I decided to start looking more broadly what were we going through. And one of the breakthroughs for me was related to just the work I used to do at Kasisi Orphanage, because Kasisi was the first orphanage that started taking on HIV-infected children. And Sister Mariola will call me because a child is sick. They didn't have any doctors there. It could be midnight at night, and I'm driving to Kasisi because a child is sick. And that's when I started to say my circle of influence has to be broader. I started dealing with nutrition issues in Zambia. I started working more broadly on how to prevent things like diarrheal disease, malnutrition. And that's when it dawned on me that I needed to go back to school and do my PhD to actually try and look at health in a more holistic way and as a global problem, and the inequities that come with that. And so that's how I started. And surprise, surprise, my PhD was in prevention of mother-to-child transmission, because I'd started working on that program in Zambia, but we're nowhere near knowing what we needed to put in place to get it to happen. So I actually went and did a PhD looking at what systems needed to be put in place in a low resource setting like Zambia, and what infrastructure we needed for the laboratory to deliver on the program. And it was when I finished my PhD that I was employed by UNICEF to take on this role within UNICEF, working first of all within Africa. Then I was transferred in our regional office, and then finally I became the global program lead for the program in UNICEF. Nice. I don't know, you were asking, I mean, I don't know whether my story speaks for itself, but I think the underlying factor here is to be aware of your surrounding and your environment, and how you can do more from the space or place that you're at. And for me, the place I was at was UTH, with the children in front of me and the many faces of issues that I was confronted with at that time.
Dr. Luo, it's so interesting listening to you talk about that. Obviously, for me, I grew up in Zambia, and during that AIDS period, and everything you're saying, I remember very clearly the different scenarios, the parent scenarios, the grandmother scenario. And like you said, Kasisi mission, I remember going to the mission and seeing the children there. So right now, I'm like really trying not to cry here, because you're really touching me. Mm-hmm. So phenomenal. And I do believe that there's you have this spirit to draw out more from people. And that's what I wish that we could get right into a little bit more. But unfortunately, we have to move on to the next segment. I hope that we can have an opportunity to carry on this conversation in another way, because I know that people would love to hear more about the story that you've just started just now. So thank you so much for joining us. And I definitely happy International Women's Day to you. Please, some last words to you.
Yes, no, thank you. Just to say that this is an amazing platform, and thanks to the organizers. We need more conversation. I mean, I think over and above everything, this is a man's world, and women need to speak out. Women need to motivate each other. And I think part of that is also working hard so that we get those positions that we need to influence. I can tell you that even where I work right now, it's a male-dominated platform, and yet I'm dealing with issues that are pertinent to women, that are pertinent to adolescent girls, that are pertinent to children. And unless we get into those positions, we're not going to leverage what we need for the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Luo. Thank you for spending some time with us today.